this week's episode of Cloudy with a Chance of Insights, a bi-weekly podcast which covers the breadth of what's new or interesting within the Microsoft cloud space, from Azure through to Office 365, security, the whole gambit. You might have noticed, if anybody tuned into last week's episode, that at least I am looking exactly the same as I did in the previous one. And that's because what's the word I'm looking for? Attentive listeners / viewers will have noticed that I mentioned that I was on annual leave coming up. So we decided to do 2 recordings back to back. And I was too lazy to go and get changed, unlike my co-hosts, David and Cyrus, who at least made an effort to look like it was a different day of recording.
Not sure what different day.
In all transparency, we've just done this back to back.
All right, I'm going to take it off now. I hate hats.
Yeah,
I will not take off the t-shirt.
And as we established on the previous recording, we don't script these. So doing 2 episodes back to back is going to be interesting to see whether our brains can cope with the continuity and coming up with content. But we're going to give it a go. As we're doing this back to back, there's nothing new in terms of what we've been up to, because basically that was exactly the same as what we did in the previous episode. So I'm going to ignore that and then just jump straight in to an article that I was actually meant to cover on the previous episode, but I'm going to cover this one now, which means it's a little bit older than it would be, which is the announcement about Project Stargate from OpenAI. I'm sure everybody probably has read or heard about this by now, but this is a expansion, I suppose, of the OpenAI work that they're doing around generative AI, obviously with the goal of getting to sort of the AGI step, but it's really a massive investment. I think it's 100 billion to start off with, but up to 500 billion over the next 4 years to build out new AI infrastructure. Primarily, it seems to indicate in the US, which is absolutely fine. That's entitled to do that. And obviously, it's in conjunction with a number of partners. Interestingly, at least from my perspective, is that Microsoft was not named as one of those equity founders. Now, obviously, they do have a stake in OpenAI, so I suppose by default they're sort of getting it through from that side. But if you look at the partners that were part of that, so it's SoftBank, and we know SoftBank like to invest in all sorts of weird and wacky things, and then try and figure out what to do with them after they've invested. I think Arm is probably the most recent example that I can think of. And I'm now going to have to validate that was actually correct, because I might have just made that up completely. But I'm almost certain that's true. SoftBank, Oracle, and MGX. I need to have a look and see who MGX are. So Oracle for me was interesting, because obviously up to date, all of the hardware that I'm aware of anyway has primarily been sort of NVIDIA based, using a lot of Azure. I'm sure they must have some on-premises stuff that's going on. Never really delved too much into it. But Oracle being mentioned and quite open about this investment is very interesting. And Microsoft have come up with a clarification post. And I'll put both links to these in the show notes. And the clarification post is almost more interesting than the initial article, because it's really just a restatement of the position that Microsoft has had with OpenAI for the last, 2 years or so. And I'm going to almost read it verbatim. So it says something along the lines of, we're thrilled to continue our strategic partnership with OpenAI and to partner on Stargate. Today's announcement is complementary to what our 2 companies have been working on together since 2019. They then go on to talk about some of the key elements of the partnership that have been in place through the duration of the contract to 2030. Then they specifically put out 4 points. So it says Microsoft has rights to OpenAI IP, inclusive of model and infrastructure for use within our products like Copilot. So that's great. So that means Copilot is going to continue, but we knew that anyway, and that shouldn't really have been impacted by this announcement. OpenAI API is exclusive to Azure. runs on Azure and is also available through the Azure OpenAI service. The agreement means customers benefit from having access to leading models on Microsoft platforms and direct from OpenAI. So the way I'm reading that is that you won't have a competing or similar service being suddenly stood up on Oracle Cloud, for example. Might not be the meaning. Microsoft and OpenAI have revenue sharing agreements that flow both ways. Again, great. So that means that there's not going to be any impact to the revenue flow within the organizations, but it doesn't say anything about there being additional revenue streams being opened up by this announcement. And Microsoft remains a major investor in OpenAI, providing funding and capacity to support their advancements, in turn benefiting from growth in valuation. And then right at the bottom, they just go on saying, yes, Azure consumption will continue to grow along with OpenAI growth, et cetera, But again, they don't explicitly call out the fact that it's going to be the only source of where this is going. And it might just be there's going to be a split between the on-prem development and sort of research pieces and then the commercial arm, even though OpenAI still is well, at least partly a non-profit organization. I still don't quite fully understand how that is set up and structured, because some of it's non-profit, some of it's for-profit. Who knows? And that was part of what all the fuss was about last year with the Sam Altman coup, for want of a better word, or the coup that impacted Sam Altman. But anyway, I suspect that by the time this airs, that might be slightly old news, but it was something that has bubbled up in a couple of places over the last couple of days. So I thought worth bringing up here to discuss and see whether anybody has any thoughts on the initial announcement and then Microsoft's quite terse response in a way, because it is a very short response. It's like 3 paragraphs and 4 bullet points.
It's interesting, isn't it? I mean, dare I say, American politics, sometimes less is more, isn't it? The more you try and offer up.
Was interesting, wasn't it? After the Trump inauguration and his commitment about AI, which I can't remember off the top of my head what that was.
There are so many ways to have this conversation. I'm trying desperately not to be political about it. And I'm failing miserably. I'm going backwards and forwards in my head going, well, you could say this, or you could say that. And I think, commitment to AI is great. I think the desire to build and grow everything in the US, thou shalt build it in the US, as opposed to build it externally and bring it in. I think there's if you're looking at national security, I'm sure the UK are keen to build any AI in the UK. Other countries, Germany, France, whoever they are, there will always be that desire to let's keep it in country. And I think what Trump has done is made it just extremely overt. And I'm not sure people are adjusting, right? And the hyperscalers, their business is based on, a global presence to deliver global capabilities, and that's how they get their revenue, right? It's by scale. And if you're all of a sudden constrained to a single thing, we know that becomes really difficult. You look at the DoD instance of Azure, right? The lag that it takes for those capabilities to get into those services, and then you take that to the extreme and you look at Azure Stack, no, Azure Local, then again, you've got even more lag. So I think a lot of this is about waiting to see what that actually looks like. And like I say, less is probably more in terms of, yes, we have OpenAI. Yes, we're the major part of that company. So, egos are funny things, aren't they? That's probably a whole other topic, but I'm going to stop there because I'm probably going to get myself in trouble.
Yeah, and probably that's a good time to remind everybody that, yes, although all 3 of us currently work for IBM, this is not an IBM-sponsored podcast by any shape or form. Any opinions expressed are our own and not reflective of any organisation that we may currently or in future work for. There you go. That's covering my behind part of the session out of the way.
Yeah. So said opinions may change at a day's notice.
Precisely. And I suppose this is probably a good opportunity to do the other obligatory thing that we end up doing on one of these ones is if you're enjoying this and you're still listening to this, then please rate, like, subscribe, comment, whatever it is. Any feedback, anything you do helps us improve what we're sort of creating here on a basis. But going back to the AI point and around that, and you mentioned the UK, and I'm going to have to go and dig this back up again, but I'm sure there was some announcement from the Starmer government around investment into AI as well.
Yes.
Last week, and I can't remember the exact details. Obviously, that wasn't with a particular hyperscaler, as we call them within IBM, so not particularly with Microsoft or AWS or OpenAI, but much more of a general commitment to say, hey, look, we are going to be a hub for AI. And there was something that you said there that just also sprang a sort of a correlation with an article that I saw on LinkedIn. And this is not a new thing. And it does also link back to an announcement the government made earlier on this week, is that if you look at the market capitalization of a lot of the sort of countries, whatever you want to call it, the US is leading by far. And a lot of that is obviously led by the tech companies. So Apple, Microsoft, Google, AWS, etc. And I think the EU is second in terms of that, and I think then China and the usual sort of crowd. But the gap between the sort of market cap of the American companies against the European companies is actually very, very stark and growing quite a lot. And I certainly read a number of articles that have hinted that it's the regulatory environment within Europe that is potentially holding some of those organizations back. So I think from a tech perspective, and again, I might be completely wrong on this one, I think Spotify is probably one of the biggest tech companies that is sort of European funded and based, because I think that's Scandinavian, I think.
Are they? I didn't know that.
I think so. I could have just made that up. And I will go and double check, and if I'm wrong, I'll put like a little disclaimer or whatever in the notes. And obviously the Starmer government announced, was it beginning of this week or last week, they were basically pushing the regulators to come up with ways to make the economy grow faster. With the aim of cutting red tape, making things a little bit easier to sort of grow, and that in theory is I suppose in response to that dominance of the American tech giants. But is it way too late to be making that move? I mean, I don't know. Who knows with what comes up with AI? Someone might come up with a really good product or a really good use case in the generative AI space or wherever that really makes a big sort of step change and changes that piece, or the US government breaks up Google or AWS, which I know there are certain court cases ongoing at the moment, and potentially with Apple as well.
Yeah, interesting.
But anyway, as usual, I took a point and then went off into a completely different direction. So as last time, I passed this one across to David first. Let's see what Cyrus has for us. I was going to say this week, but obviously for those paying attention, it's actually the same week as we just did the previous episode for. But anyway, Cyrus.
No, it's a different day. I have a different T-shirt. Come on.
Yeah, perhaps I need to learn some special effects to put some sort of time warp thing in the.
I was going for Bill and Ted, but they'll probably be lost on most people. So
I would try to not do the same digressions loop like last week, like this morning. Oh, you confused me. Like the previous podcast. For you, it's 2 weeks separately, but for us, it's 4. So I'm aware of my mistake. So this one started with like a simple conversation, and often I hear, "Oh, VPN is dead," and we have this conversation about how to secure your workload, etc., etc. And it's interesting to see that we have this kind of extreme way of talking sometimes, saying VPN is dead, like antivirus is dead. Antivirus is just like you check a signature towards a database, and then this is not the way we do things. And now we use EDR, XDR, and we have this narrative, which is true actually. Like we have different way of doing things today because there's new threats, new evolution, and now we have the different paradigm of cloud native, etc., etc. So For the antivirus, I just use analogy quickly. Antivirus is not dead because you still use the agent and the antivirus on the machine, but you supercharge it with more holistic signals, and then you can do more things. And this is how it works. Same for VPN. We have like we use the traditional way of before we use data centers, and you had all the connections from the network perspective and security in one place. So if you worked in different place remotely, you still had to use a VPN, which is still safe today. You can't really break a VPN easily. You route all the data to your data centers, company data centers, and then everything, all the magic happened here. Of course, we talked many times, and Richard multiple times mentioned that zero trust and had a new way of thinking. We can't have the perimeter as a security now; it's more an identity, etc., etc. But today we still use some form of routing. We still use like instead of going to the data centers, we go in what we call towards the edge. What is edge? We use more the wherever the user is. We're going to do the security there. So now I digress more to go to what is edge. We hear of an edge, and I was also confused. English is not my native language. I was like edge is there, and I understand what edge. But just to be on the same page, edge is actually in the cloud context is just like where this point of presence, we call point of presence, what are those new data centers for the controls on the network. So edge can be, for example, instead of for a shop or retail, is all these small data centers they have is an edge. For home office is the small routers, small stuff you have is called the edge. So in the context of cloud, edge can be like your cloud edge, security, etc. Is more the highly distributed cloud data centers of point of presence. That's. So how do you protect those? So there's again a concept that I wanted to share. I'm trying to go fast. We called SASE. So in different clients, different mission, we have this kind of, okay, now we need a SASE. SASE is a standard, it's a framework. So SASE, if you don't know, means Secure Access Service Edge. And it's a merge of all the network SD1 stuff, software design one, and all the security service combined together. And I can recap quickly what those things. And this is how you protect now the user wherever they are. And this is faster, it's more resilient. How do you define a SASE? I have here the Microsoft website. I'm going to share the link. It's excellent. It's called Security 101. And they have plenty of different, like what is trust, what is EDR. And I don't know why I didn't saw this kind of website before. I learned from different routes, but the Microsoft one, usually I don't check them because it's really marketing and generic, but this one is actually, this session is really good. And you have 6 components for SASE. I'm going to just read them and just going to go to the point. To have a SASE, you need a software-defined wide area network, so SD1. WAS, the name is funny. It's firewall as a service, so think of it as all the firewall service we have, Palo Alto, IBM, etc. Secure web gateway, going to come to that one, SWG. Zero trust network access, cloud security broker, cloud application security broker, and centralized and unified management. So Microsoft released last year and officially in public preview a few months ago, Intra access. So you have intra internet access and private access, and that is an SSE. So again, the name is important. Secure Service Edge. So it's like SASE, but with the A removed. And it's a component of a SASE. So it's not really a SASE. There's debates. Microsoft is a SASE. Microsoft don't intend to be a SASE because Microsoft now shifted to a service model, but is they don't have on-premise, or they don't sell really. They don't sell really. They don't buy into that market. So the clients, whatever clients you have, whatever company you use, you necessarily have your own network, Cisco, Zscaler, Palo Alto, and this is your SD1, and you have on top of that the security service edge, and from this component we talked about, and that's why Microsoft now is playing closer to where the user are, and add the identity component to secure more the users. Just one example. we had with E5 users having, for example, endpoint defender for endpoints. You already have what we call the SWG, so secure web gateway, but it was not granular, and sometimes clients needed more control. But basically, it's just a checkbox game. Like normally, you check, we have the secure web gateway, fine, it's part of the license, and we move to something else. So there's an overlap, and there's a discussion on why this Entra came into play. And for me, it was also very confusing. And after multiple debate, conversation, even within IBM, like why they created this kind of Entra access, etc., why they want to compete in that arena. And actually makes sense because if you just take the internet access, you control all the internet, all the URLs from the users. You add like malware protection, and you have a real SWG, and that's how it works. That's how we had a discussion about DDoS and etc. That's how you protect your users to distinguish them as real users. They are who they are. They claim they are, and have access to secure application within the company. I mean, that is a different project, but it's the same philosophy. So I talk really fast. I'm going to stop here because there's a lot to say, but I try to decipher the full process of VPNs, antivirus, SASE, SSE, etc. Again, we're really interested in your comments. If anyone in the audience can just share the struggle they had, me, it was like why Microsoft is competing with himself. But actually, it made more sense what they tried to do. But even you guys, if there's anything you want to share, if any question.
I suspect that there was a lot of users in the US over the last week that suddenly had an interest in VPNs.
For TikTok, yeah.
Not mention any names or any reasons. Obviously, completely separate use case to what you were referring to, Cyrus.
No, but you see, that's the subject. We have VPNs, and a lot of users they can be confused. For example, for this particular reason, sometimes doesn't work because it's not enough, and it's sometimes interesting to go back to the basic and try to decipher all these marketing names: SASE, SSE, VPNs. VPN is dead. Why you say it's dead? And so that's why I was really interested by this subject for this session.
Yeah, it's a good conversation.
Excellent.
I'm sorry.
For once, I have nothing to add apart from that pithy comment about TikTok.
No names.
You said it. No,
yeah, I said it. I know. I couldn't get away with it. And it was only for a day, wasn't it? Because they basically came back and Trump has said that he likes TikTok now and he's probably not going to do anything about it. So there you go. Mr. Rowley.
Yeah, so I've got three things that I'm going to whiz through quickly, I think. So the last episode, we spoke about sort of architecture and scalability and resilience and stuff, didn't we? And I thought it'd be a good time to call out an ex-colleague, a chap called Barry O'Reilly. I don't know if you've come across him at all. And he's come up with a concept called residuality theory. Residuality. Oh my good God! So it's this weird thing again, Richard. It's this weird thing again. Anyway,
at least that is a more difficult word to say than Gen AI, which I still have to really concentrate to be able to announce properly.
Residuality theory. Thank you. And it's all about sort of dealing with change and unpredictability. So I think when we design software architecture historically, right, we try and plan everything up front, try and get in people's minds and work out what's going to go wrong and how people can use it. And that's just not life, is it, really? It's not life at all. And so equally not for us, but not for businesses, and businesses even worse because there's a whole bunch of different things in there. So this concept takes a different approach, and instead of planning for every nth detail, we build something simple first. So this concept of build something small. then you imagine all the ways it could be stressed, like, a competitor could drop their price or new regulations, and then test that component and see how it holds up. And every time you tweak and improve it, what's left after all these tests are called these residues, which is where the name of the thing comes from. And they then help create a system that can handle surprises. So in this context, sort of the big idea is to stop aiming for perfection and focus on flexibility. So, you can never predict the future. And if you try, you're always going to fail, right? So it's more about being ready for whatever comes next, and then sort of think about it as stress testing your ideas so they go stronger over time. It's a relatively new concept that Barry's shared, is one that's generating a lot of conversation in the architecture world. Some people hate it, some people love it. Lots of people trying to copy it. They're trying to plagiarize it. So there's all sorts of really interesting conversations going on. He's just released his second book, and I just wanted to give him a shout out because I think it's really, really interesting. A lot of it is heavy math based, right? So he does it based on maths, he does it based on philosophy, and he then bases it on architecture. And I think the intersection of all those things, when we say, architecture is art and science, he has taken it to that extent. Wow. And is diving deep into the science, but diving deep into the art, which is the philosophy and everything else that underpins it. So I thought that was a really, really interesting thing. Moving on quickly, number 2, go take a look at what Microsoft's done with Coldplay. So there's a new collaboration between Microsoft and Coldplay, where you can now essentially create a short video that blends into a video that they're going to use as part of their, I think it's the Over the Moon thing, using Azure AI Studio. Go play with the experience. It's really, really good. I did it this morning, and you can create yourself a little clip. You can sort of base it on where you are emotionally and the things that they give you to play with. And at the bottom of it falls a little clip that you can download, which is really, really awesome with their music. And then at some point it'll be shown live. So your clip gets merged into everyone else's clips, and then it gets presented, which is really awesome. And I did say a third thing, didn't I? But for the life of me, I can't remember what it was. Hang on. The third thing, I'm getting carried away. Yes, yesterday. I've not watched all of it. And we've been talking about networking stuff a lot. Cisco had an AI summit yesterday. And I think there are only 2 points within that summit that they actually talk about product. Everything else in the middle was just really interesting people talking about some of the challenges of AI, people talking about how they've created silicon for AI, they're a bunch of really, really interesting people. I've not finished watching it yet, but I was quite enjoying it while I was watching it yesterday evening. So if you're at a loss for something else to do once you've listened to this, go take a look at that, because it's an interesting take, right? Because you always think of Cisco historically as the network people. They drive and deliver the network capability. Now, we know they've acquired and whatnot, and they're turning more into a software company. But I thought there's some really interesting perspectives there. So well worth sharing. It's me. I've rushed through. I'm sorry, but I'm late for a call. So
even for this one, now we're actually almost exactly on time. But because we ran over for the previous one, we're running a little bit tight on this one. So I will wrap up. The Coldplay one, I'll put a link into the piece for it. It's called Coldplay: A Film for the Future. David's explained it quite well, but I'll put the link into the show notes for that one. And all that leaves me now to do is just say thank you for watching or listening, depending on the platform of your choice. And we wish you a good rest of the day, and we'll speak to you in a fortnight, or by week, or 2 weeks if you're American and don't know what fortnight means.
Sorry, just rub it in, why don't you, Richard?
If you allow me one word for this Barry O'Reilly, you talked to me about that a long time ago, David. I didn't know he was doing a second book. I encourage everyone to I haven't finished. I have the first book. I haven't finished it, but it humbles you if you think you know microservices, because it re-question everything. And on YouTube, you can see I have like 1 hour's multiple videos. And every minute is like insight over insight. Honestly, it's it's really relevant. Everything he says is relevant. So
Yeah.
no, thanks for sharing this one.
100%. Awesome.
Excellent. So again, thank you very much, and see you in 2 weeks' time.
Cheers all.
Bye bye.
Bye.